Hello everyone, it's Michelle. Welcome to Contentment Guide Astrology. This video is about the Mars retrograde, and it's also about the Mars Pluto opposition that's going to happen 3 times between November and April. So welcome to my channel. Please like, please share, please comment, please subscribe. It helps my business and my channel to grow, and I love to know how these transits are influencing you in your life. So this Mars Pluto opposition is a very intense and transformative energy, and combined with the Mars retrograde, it's a very long process. So I would say to not really evaluate this at the start of the first opposition, or even when Mars starts turning retrograde, because this is going to be a process that's going to happen between now and only in May of 2025 will we be able to look back and see what we have worked on and how we have transformed in these areas of our lives. So at the end of this video, I'm also going to give a brief explanation of where this Mars retrograde and the Mars Pluto oppositions are going to fall for you in your chart by rising sign or sun sign if you choose. So I want to first give some significations of Pluto and Mars in a simple way, just to get us thinking about what they are about. But these are very deep symbologies, and I suggest that if you are following astrology, you can do more of your own research on these planetary energies. So Pluto is often known as that energy of death and rebirth, and everyone says that those words are overused when it comes to Pluto, but they really are the truth. And so it's a very easy way to see how Pluto influences us in our lives, because it's like a caterpillar and butterfly situation where if we have a Pluto transit, especially aspecting one of our natal planets, when we look back after usually about a 3-year period, because the Pluto process can be so slow when it aspects a natal planet, we're usually transformed and almost alchemically changed in a way that when we look back to 3 years before when this transit started, we are completely different in some aspect of our lives where this transit happened. So death, rebirth, transformation, definitely very Pluto. Like I said, also alchemy, because we are changed from one state to a different state and we don't recognize who we were before. Pluto is intense. It influences subconscious. It lets us work with our shadows and wounds. It's about things that are unseen. And Pluto is all about either suppressing things we're not ready to see, or otherwise excavating those things from the subconscious mind and the shadows and our wounds that we are now ready to see and transform. And like I said, it's life-changing. A Pluto transit to a natal planet it changes your life. When you look back, you're not the same person anymore. And then Mars. Mars is also known as the god of war. It is about drive and action. It is about sexuality, our assertiveness, how we use our energy and our desire. So you can already see by just looking at the basic significations of Pluto and Mars that these are some intense and explosive energies that can really work with some very deep things in our lives at this time. So I also want to note that this transit will not affect everyone equally. It really depends about your own natal placements. If you are having a Mars perfection here, then this will influence you more. If you are a Scorpio, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or Aries, Sun, Moon, and Rising, this could affect you more because you are natally ruled by Mars. And also if you have any planets or points between 17 of Cancer and 6 of Leo, and especially those 29 degrees of Cancer, and also Capricorn, and 1 degree of Leo and Aquarius. People with planets or placements there at the 29 and 1 degrees will really feel this very strongly. But not everyone will be affected equally, and it is going to be dealing with our unconscious things, and it can bring about anger and aggression and really uncomfortable feelings. So if this does not affect you strongly personally, just be aware and be compassionate with those around you who may be strongly influenced by this transit and by this Mars retrograde. So I want to give a brief outline of the process and the dates that we are going to go through. So this is really a seven months process that we will only be able to look back on by May next year. So Mars entered Cancer and then entered the shadow period of the retrograde on the 5th of October. So this basically starts at the beginning of October. And then by the 3rd of November, we're going to have the first opposition between Mars and Pluto. And this is at 29 Cancer and 29 Capricorn. Then by the 7th of December, Mars is now in Leo and starts its retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. So again, if you have planets or points or your ascendant or descendant anywhere near 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees of Leo, this is going to affect you quite strongly. So that's the 7th of December, it starts its retrograde. And then by the 3rd of January, which is almost another month later, Mars is now going to oppose Pluto from 1 degree of Leo to 1 degree of Aquarius. And then it continues with its retrograde. By the 5th of January, it enters Cancer again. And now it's moving really, really slowly. So between the 5th of January and the 23rd of February, so that's almost another 2 months, then it starts turning direct again at 17 degrees of Cancer. So it's going to spend a very, very long time when it stations around that 17 degrees of Cancer mark. So if you have planets at 16, 17, 18 degrees of Cancer, you're going to feel this very strongly because Mars is basically going to be stationing and standing still at those points for a while. And now Mars is direct and it's moving forward again, slowly again. And only by the 18th of April, it enters Leo again. And then by the 26th and 27th of April, then it opposes Pluto again. So this is really a long process. And only by the 2nd of May, it passes the 6 degrees of Leo again and clears that shadow period where it first started turning retrograde. So this is a long process that we're going to be going through, and like I said, it's going to be working with challenging things, subconscious things. It's going to be working with anger, and it can be very abrasive, and it can be about power struggles. With Pluto, there's often power struggles involved, because it wants us to find a new way of asserting our power. And so because Mars is also involved in this, it's such a strong energy, because Mars is about our assertiveness and how we use our energy. So the Pluto Mars energy together, and in opposition especially, it can have feelings of, and even physical experiences of death and rebirth. So you may experience a death of a family member or somebody you know. And this is not to put anyone into fear, but obviously this depends on where this falls into your chart, because even though Pluto is not always about a literal death and rebirth, it can sometimes be about physical death, because it is a death and then a rebirth in the next life or the afterlife, depending on how you see it. Because it's Pluto and it deals with the subconscious, and Mars is dealing with our energy, it can often bring subconscious things to light, and some people can be dealing with panic attacks, because often when something is trying to escape from the subconscious mind that we are ready to see and ready to heal, but it hasn't quite surfaced yet, that's when we may have some panic attacks, because the energy in our body is trying to help that unseen and suppressed thing to surface to the conscious mind. So that's one manifestation of things that can happen. Different kinds of crisis depending on where this falls in your chart, in how you're dealing with your unconscious things, what you may have needed to transform for a while but have been ignoring, and just in general sense of frustration of things that we may have been wanting to change and never got to. And now this Mars retrograde and this long process is helping us, if we want to see it that way, even though it may be really uncomfortable. This long transit is going to help us to transform these parts of our lives. And yes, Pluto can be very intense, and it can really magnify things, and it can also pinpoint things. So there might be something in our lives that we could never really pinpoint why a certain part isn't working, and Pluto can bring such a microscopic view that we suddenly see, wow, now I see this clearly, and I can transform it, and I can move on to a new way of being in a certain part of life. So I want to give a brief house and sign related overview for various rising signs. So generally I would advise anyone to go by rising sign, as it is more accurate according to your birth chart. But you can also do this for sun sign or moon sign if that is what you relate to. But as I'm just going to call this a rising sign. So for people who are Aries rising, Cancer is your 4th house. So this is where Mars is going to be spending a really long time. And Leo is your 5th house. Now Cancer, the 4th house, Fourth house is about family. It's about ancestry. It's about genealogy. It's about your physical home. It's about emotionally and energetically where you feel at home. And then the fifth house is called the house of joy. The fifth house is about creativity. It's about hobbies. It's about where we find and do the things that we love. It can be about romance and sexuality. So for Aries, between those two houses, and mostly the fourth house, which is the house of home and family, that's where it's at for you. And for Taurus rising, Cancer is your third house and Leo is your fourth house. So for Taurus rising, Mars will be in the third house for the longest period of time, and the third house is your environment. It is your physical environment that surrounds your home, like your neighborhood, where you drive between your home and your work and your local shopping, all of these things. The third house is about your communication. It's about your mind. So there's some big transformation that's going to happen for you in those areas of life. And then the fourth house is home, family, ancestry, physical home. So those two houses will be activated for the Taurus risings. For Gemini rising, Cancer is your second house and Leo is your third house. So Mars will be spending most of the time in this retrograde in your second house. Your second house is the house of resources. It's inner resources that you have, like skills, skills you use to make your money. It is resources, physical resources like money, and other resources that you also use to make your life better. So big transformation for you in how you assert yourself in terms of how you use your resources, and transformation in this area of resources. And then where the retrograde starts in the house of Leo is the third house, which is the environment, and the mind and your way of thinking. And then for Cancer risings, this is a big one because Mars will be spending a lot of time in your first house. And so the first house is about you. It's who you are. It's how you operate in the world. It's your physical body. So this Mars retrograde is going to bring about a transformation in all these areas. How you assert yourself, how you deal with your body, maybe your exercise routine, even dealing with your own internal anger issues. Things like that. It can be a huge transformation in happening in the first house. And then Leo, where the retrograde starts, is your second house of resources. And then for Leo risings, Cancer is your 12th house. This is where Mars is going to be spending most of the retrograde. The 12th house is that liminal space before we are born. It is subconscious. It is where we deal with our suppressed things. It's where we deal with spirituality, those things that are non-physical. It can be a place of sexuality. So there's a big transformation for Leos around subconscious things, and how we work with those things that may be unseen and want to come to light. And for Leos, this is also important because the retrograde starts in the first house, So for Leos, there's also transformation around who you are, your body, how you are seen, and how you operate in the world. And then for Virgo rising, Cancer is your 11th house and Leo is your 12th house. So Mars will be in Cancer, the 11th house, for the longest period of time, and standing still for the longest period of time. 11th house is that place of groups of friends, colleagues. It's hopes and wishes. It's who we connect to. So there might be a real transformation for you in rethinking and reevaluating who you are connected to, and a real transformation in terms of groups and colleagues, and even finding new benefactors and seeing changes and people coming into your life and leaving your life in this part of your chart. And then the retrograde for Virgo risings, it starts in your 12th house. And again, that is that liminal space. It is the unconscious, it is the unseen, it is a spiritual house, it is a house of sexuality. So there's some changes there happening for Virgo risings as well. For Libra rising, Cancer is your 10th house, where Mars will be spending most of its time. And the 10th house is called the house of career, but it's also more than career. It is that space where you are seen in public life. So with transits in the 10th house, it's not always specifically about career. It can be about how you are seen in public. A change of status, going from single to married, or a job change, or just a general change in how people see you in public life. And then the retrograde starts for you in the 11th house, and that is the house of groups and friends and wishes and benefactors. And Scorpio rising. Cancer is your 9th house. This is where Mars will be spending most of its time. And the 9th house is a house of spirituality, the higher mind, higher learning, foreign places, foreign cultures. So there is a big transformation happening for you in these areas, Scorpio rising. And then the retrograde starts in the 10th house, which is that house of career and public life and public status. And then we have Sagittarius rising. Cancer for you is your 8th house, where Mars will be spending most of its time. The 8th house is also an in-between space. The 8th house is seen as the house of transformation. It is a house of death, which can be a literal or energetic and spiritual death, transformation. The 8th house is about how we share things with other people, resources, and physical resources, energetic resources, love. It's also a house of sexuality. So transformations for Sagittarius in that area. And the retrograde starts for Sagittarius rising in the 9th house, which is the house of spirituality and foreign travel and cultures and higher learning. And for Capricorn rising, Cancer is your 7th house. And the 7th house is the house of one-on-one relationships. It's the 7th house is your marriage partners, it's your business partners, it's your any one-on-one relationships that you spend a lot of time with. It's also clients, and it can also be online based clients if you are somebody who works online. So the retrograde starts for Capricorn rising in the 8th house, which again is that house of death and rebirth and transformation, and also shared resources. And then we come to Aquarius rising, and so Mars will be spending most of its time in Cancer in your 6th house. And the 6th house is about physical health. It is about your day-to-day environment, those how you follow your routines, actions you take on a day-to-day basis, how you order your day and your month, and how you do your planning. Those are all to do with the 6th house, and it's also the house of work, where the 10th house is more related to career as such. 6th house is related to work, and again, those day-to-day things that we do every day. And for Aquarius rising, the retrograde is going to start in your 7th house of one-on-one partnerships. And lastly, for Pisces rising, Cancer, where Mars is going to be spending most of its time, is your 5th house. And the 5th house is that place of joy. It is hobbies that you do, it's your creativity, it's sexuality, it's how you find yourself and relax. So a transformation for Pisces rising in this area. And the retrograde starts in the 6th house, which is the house of day-to-day, of work, of physical health. So those are the short significations I just wanted to give for the rising signs, because this is a very long process orientated transit that's going to transform our lives. And again, it won't be equally strong for everybody, but just be patient and kind and compassionate with those around you that it may be affecting in a big way. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this transit report. And yes, do your own research if you want to know more about Mars retrogrades or Mars Pluto oppositions, or even the houses that this is going to be falling in for you. And if you would like to know more, you can also book a personal reading with me, and I will leave the link for that below. I will see you next time.